Now I request Vineet ji to let us know the highlights of what exactly the guidelines is telling, and how you think that this will encourage the industry.
Sure, sure, sure. So I will share my screen. You can see the screen?
Yes, 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 we can see.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking out your time in the end of the month, being the first month of the financial year. As already Sanjeev briefed you about the overview of the scheme, the scheme was more expected from the government looking towards that expect the scheme is closed on 31st March 24. There is a gap of around 13 months after that the new scheme came. During our initial discussion, expectation was that the scheme would have come last year in July or August. But due to the multiple approvals, deliberation with industry, the notification came on 8th April and the 26th April we got the guidelines. And now after 2 days from Thursday, we are looking to apply for a scheme. Before that we go into scheme, I will just give you insight how this scheme has been structured based on recommendation of Niti Aayog report, which came in last year, July, which expect that FY23, our component production was around 15 billion US dollar. They want to make it 10 times by FY30. It means next 5 years, we need to run to have a multiple CAGR percentage growth rate to reach that number. And now we need to see how that scheme, ECMS, Electronic Component Manufacturing Scheme, helps India to be a hub having strong capabilities in component manufacturing. Today, we are an assembly-led electronic sector, and government is looking to shift where value-added, complete end-to-end components are manufactured in India. So, in the global value chain, we can increase our share. You can see from the slide that how the way in last 6 years from 17 to 23 we grown 13% CAGR from 48 billion to 101 billion. In additional sector apart from what were in FY17 like hearable, wearables and all. And the same way a government looking further ambition to move further to take it forward. Here a snapshot of the global economies, even small countries from India who have more contribution to global value chain in electronics, like Vietnam, Malaysia, South Korea, and all. So India have target that currently we are only 1%. We should make it to the 5 to 6% of the by 2030 for a 4 trillion electronics. For achieving that, obviously, there are a number of things. Even Niti Aayog told we need a fiscal and non-fiscal proposals to take it forward. Even Niti Aayog pushed that there should be also concentration on increase in generation of employment. If you just say the same way the scheme has been developed, all suggestions and inputs has been taken of Niti Aayog and accordingly drafted after discussion with industry stakeholders. If you see the snapshot of the scheme, as even briefed by our other co-speaker, Mr. Sanjeev, objective is to have a robust component manufacturing ecosystem, have a more domestic value addition accordingly in certain products. They've asked to have a specific value addition for specific products. Being this scheme is giving around 22,000 odd crores as a disbursement for next 6 years, the expectation is investment should be 3 times, around 60,000 crores. Production should be around 4,56,500 crores. And employment to be also generated, which is also one of the conditions for one part of the incentive to give it to you. The direct employment of around 91,600, and also they are expecting indirect employment will increase. The complete scheme is divided for 4 segments, target products. started with sub-assembly, a bare component, selected bare component, and also they have included a back-end supply chain, calling it a supply chain ecosystem for parts and some sub-components for the above ABC. And also you can manufacture any capital good for electronics manufacturing, which is not only for the above ABC, it can be for any electronics manufacturing. So you can see the wide scope given to an end-to-end scheme. So for A, B, C, sub-assemblies, bare components, selected bare components, which are on the turnover linked, there will be a base year. And the base year is the previous financial year. However, if you want to add 1 year more for your setup and manufacturing, you can opt 1 year gestation period. And in that case, current financial year will be your base year. Base year is mainly purpose to compute an incremental sales turnover because the turnover linked and all. And overall, the scheme is a blended of the MSIPs or specs of METI scheme and also the PLIs which are running across multiple sectors. Now, as we discussed, tenure of the scheme is for 6 years till 2032. Whether you are a greenfield project or expansion, modernization, or diversification project called a brownfield, you are eligible. Now, before you apply based on incremental investment, incremental sales, or any other condition, as a applicant, whether a company or LLP, you have to be also eligible based on your turnover, which we will discuss in the other slides. That is a precondition apart from other conditions which you need to satisfy before you become eligible and apply for that. As you see, range is varying for every product, every segment, based on how much criticality is there, how much India need that product, how much India have a dependency in the market, ranging from minimum 1% to maximum 10%. And for every product, it is decreasing year on year. So it's like a law of diminishing marginal utility, where they are giving more in the initial setup and reducing year on year. Regarding ABC segment, you're getting turnover linked. In some case, you're getting capex, which is maximum 25% in line with the specs or MSIPs. You will get it, which is mainly for your SDI, flexible PCBs, SMT passive components, supply chain components, or capital goods. Only for two parts from A and from the specific category C, which is the SDI, MSIPs, you are getting the turnover linked incentive and capex. And for SMT passive component, you are getting again turnover linked and capex. Here for Li-ion cell and multi-layer PCB being it's a crucial product, they're giving additional 1 and 2% if you do laminate manufacturing also in India of cathode, sorry, it's a laminate for multi-layer PCB and CAM, cathode active material for Li-ion cell manufacturing. And please note, Li-ion cell is only for a specific ICT product. It is not for the auto industry and other things. So they were specifically excluded because there is already a PLI. Already there is a PLI for the battery also. So for A, B, C segment, sub-assembly, bare component, selected bare component, the major chunk is given around 21,000 odd crore, and small chunk of 1,712 crore given to the B segment covering supply chain ecosystem and capital goods for electronics manufacturing. Again, there is one condition, pehle aao, pehle pao. Once you are eligible, getting pre-approval, then you apply for subsidy. Subsidy is again on the first come, first serve. If you are late and the budget is over, you will not get money, even you are eligible. So please note, in this complete journey of next 7 years, from applying for a pre-approval, then complying year on year, filing your quarterly returns, complying with other conditions, then applying for incentives based on condition achieved, and then review and getting money. Again, it's a complete and lengthy process in line with the other PLIs and schemes. You need to follow to get the money. Any one condition not achieved, even others are achieved, the money will not come for a particular year. But it will not impact your money flow or incentive flow for subsequent years. Now, again, there is a catch. Every applicant will get maximum. It's a good indication so that the big player do not take away all the chunk of incentives, which we have seen in other PLIs, which happened till now. Here, if you're investing 100 crore based on the eligibility, you will get maximum incentive in the form of 50%, around 50 crore, whether in the form of a turnover based or capex based or your hybrid based. So complete limit is there, and this limit is not applicable to additional incentive which is given for lean cell and multi-layer PCB. Now we'll go in detail further about how the target segments are covered. In the sub-assembly, your display module, sub-assembly, camera module, sub-assembly. And please note, it's not only a mere assembly, which is we will discuss in detail in the next slides. It should be a proper manufacturing. And bare component cover your non-surface mount device, component for electronic applications, electromechanical, multi-layer PCB, lead-ion cell for digital application, excluding storage and mobility, and enclosures for mobile, IT hardware product, and related device. Selected bare component cover your HDI, MSAP, flexible PCB, and SMT passive component. And obviously, supply chain ecosystem have a identified part, and it's all illustrative. It can be more than that. It all depend on your system, ecosystem, and where you're supplying. It depends. Same for capital good. It is open to all the categories if it is used for electronic manufacturing, including their sub-assemblies and components. The complete supply chain of electronics, if you're supplying even a capital goods, you are eligible. Like 2 weeks back, I was discussing one gentleman from Bangalore, Mr. Venkatraman. He was talking that he's making some testing equipment for electronics. In that case, that will also come into that category to apply for that. The complete snapshot, if you can see of the scheme, what is the minimum maximum investment for each and every category? How much sales? You have to do a minimum investment, minimum sales, and minimum employment. All three has to be satisfied. If two satisfied, investment and sales, you will get particular amount after getting 1% of turnover linked and 5% for capital subsidy. Once you achieve the employment criteria, then you will get that money also. For ABC, we have 3 months to apply from 1st May to 31st July, which may be extended subject to availability of funds based on performance and how many applications they receive in initial 3 months. This turnover linked or hybrid we will get for next 6 years. For category D, only capex, where you need to make minimum 10 crore investment, and employment will be 10 employees per 1 crore investment. So if 10 crore, you need 100 employees to be employed. And this category is for 2 years to apply for it. Now we'll come to the major thing, because government has put number of conditions to ensure that only genuine and at least medium player or larger players or international players come. Because investment can be from the Indian conglomerate or from the overseas conglomerate or through joint ventures. In all types of route, they are looking for people to come in. If you see the major 5 conditions, you can be a greenfield or brownfield, as I mentioned earlier. For every product, for every segment, you need to apply for separate application. So for a single product, you can't have a multiple application. If you apply multiple, then it will be rejected. You need to comply with FDI requirement, which came in 2020 circulars, post-COVID. And in case you have got acknowledgement of your application under spec, which closed on 31st March 2024, and there is an issue of funding availability in that scheme, and you did not receive your approval till now, you can shift to this scheme subject to the qualification and eligibility criteria of this scheme. Now, there is no clarity how it will work. What are the criteria? Because I am already eligible under specs, and my product, suppose not falling under the ECMS, how they will decide whether I am in or out? They yet to come out with further details and clarification on that. Then only all the pending approval under specs will shift to ECMS. Now, additional criteria. So for A, B, C, your sub-assembly, bare component, and selected bare component, you need to have a criteria of having minimum turnover. Now, ESDM revenue and manufacturing revenue both are segregated. If you see here the definition of ESDM, as we know, all the abbreviation is electronic system design and manufacturing. But it's a good catch here, but it covers the design, development, or manufacturing of electronic systems and products. It means not only manufacturing revenue. If you're in R&D, if you're in designing, like we have seen in the ISM, people got the approvals. In all these cases, also your ESDM revenue will be considered. So these ESDM revenue numbers are not only for manufacturing, it also includes the design and development. It's a good move. And manufacturing revenue is open manufacturing. They are not categorizing whether it's the manufacturing of electronic, non-electronic, which product, which category, which segment. Nothing is classified. So if you are satisfying the manufacturing definition of GST, you are in. Now, for every category, there is a ESDM revenue and manufacturing revenue. For example, for display module, either I should have a ESDM revenue of 250 crore or 750 crore of manufacturing revenue. Or with whom I am doing JV, they should have the either of the revenue. Then I am in, otherwise I am out. Same if you see for SDI, MSME flexible PCB, ESDM revenue is 500 crore and manufacturing revenue is 1500 crore. Even if you see today's news, Tata Electronics is planning to move to the component segment along with Dixon, and Tata Electronics is going to invest around 2,000 crores only for the component manufacturing. So just imagine already industry is mentally prepared to go into the scheme and create India as a proper component manufacturing. Now we come to the other part. If you are JV, they will give the weightage on the weighted average revenue upon shareholding pattern. Whether ESDM is more shareholding or a manufacturing. Based on that, they will decide what type of revenue they will take. In case you are not meeting the global ESDM revenue, but only manufacturing revenue, then you need to show a technological capability for the target segment, whether in-house capability or binding term sheet with a technology partner or a TOT, a transfer technology agreement, or any other document which demonstrate that you have a technology partner or support available with you. If it is not available, you are not satisfying ESDM revenue, but only manufacturing, and that is not available, you are out. For D category, which is your supply chain ecosystem and capital goods. Being it the ongoing, you need to satisfy your minimum investment criteria. And on 31st March 24, it means previous to previous year, my net worth should be equal or more than 50% of my investment. If I declare I will do investment of 100 crore, I should have net worth of minimum 50 crore. If my net worth is less than 50 crore, then I should show the source of funding to them along with the board resolution. And please note, a source of funding, they go in depth. If you say you have internal accruals, show me in the account. If you say promoter is putting this money, show the promoter net worth. If you say loan has been given, show me the loan sanction letter. End to end, you need to justify, and then only you will be eligible for category D to call it. Now, it's an incremental investment, correct? If your investment on particular date is 20 and it is asking 50, it means 20 plus 50, 70 crores should be reflected in your books of account. Now, every investment is not considered here. So, majorly what is covered is your plant, machinery, equipment. Even recently, when judgment came under GST law between definition whether building covers under plant or machinery or plant and machinery. So again, it was a complete dicey judgment and giving the different view based on facts of the case. But in this scheme, building, factory building or construction is specifically excluded. So we cannot go by all this definition. We need to go by simple definition of plant, machinery, equipment. Any tools, dies, molds, jigs, fixtures, all will be covered. In end-to-end process, whether for design, manufacturing, assembly, testing, packaging, processing, and all. And whatever expenditure you cover on packaging, freight, transport, insurance, and erection commissioning of the plant, machinery, equipment will be also covered, subject to cap of 7.5% of the base cost. If your base cost is 100, maximum you can take 107.5, not beyond that. Even suppose your actual is 110. Also, you can cover here your associate utility, covering your captive power, ETP, essential equipment like clean rooms, air containers. It's a wide definition by putting etc. It covers and all. And the specific told it covers your ITS, including servers, software, and ERP. So in-house R&D, you can take into picture to take this one. But any non-creditable taxes only for eligibility you can take, not eligible for getting the money. Second-hand capital goods refurbished allowed, subject to the certificate from chartered engineer. As Sanjeev mentioned, land and building not covered, again same. It is nothing new. In spec also it was not there. But in the MSIPs, land was covered, building was covered. So I think now government is slowly shifting only to the core machinery which is required. Otherwise, they are not giving the incentive. Obviously, OPEX will never be considered, which is very common for any of the schemes. You can use this machinery not for the only target product, also for others, but you need to declare it. You have to capitalize them. And again, one more thing. So now this scheme has been notified on 8th April. So any person already started investing, he is eligible from 8th April onwards for any investment made to be counted for the purpose of getting subsidy. For A, B, C category, which is your sub-assemblies, bare component, and selected bare component. For specs, only from date of acknowledgement of scheme. For supply chain ecosystem and for capital goods, only from the scheme, ECMS scheme acknowledgement is issued, otherwise not. So if you see all the aspects here, majorly investment definition is very wide except land and building. You can cover anything. Now let's see type of incentive. As we already know for ABC turnover link, for category C, it's a hybrid also on certain products. And category D, it's only the capital goods. As I already mentioned you have a 1 year gestation period, you can take it for ABC category. And you can file your subsidy claim within 9 months of end of the financial year. For example, this financial year, I should file my claim by 31st December 2026. I can file on a quarterly basis also, subject to I am achieving the investment and sales criteria. So obviously the general part is that you have to achieve all the criteria of investment, sales and employment, otherwise you will not get the benefit. Contract manufacturing will not be considered under the scheme. Only some part you can do with your job work, otherwise you need to go in that part. Ineligibility, it does not impact 1 year if you're not getting incentive for other year. And also by getting the incentive in this scheme, you can have a state incentive, you can have other incentives, subject to the turnover and investment. What is incentive here? You can't claim government of Bharat incentive under any other scheme. Now we have a specific condition. I told you that this scheme is not giving the vanilla answer for each and every segment. Every segment have a multiple condition, multiple aspect to be created on the ground. Only then you get money here. For a display module, so it's a you need to also carry the sub-assembly process for FOG, film on glass, COG, chip on glass to avail incentive. Only doing semi-assembled of this product not eligible. Same for camera module, FOL front on line, and UL end of line. Otherwise not eligible. For multi-layer PCB, you need to, from second year onwards, localize one of the parts, like any process chemistry material, any finished chemistry material, solder, mask ink, tin balls, and solder each year. Every year after second year, you need to localize one part or compound. And localization of PCM and FCM is only for 1 year. It cannot be repeated. For Li-ion cell for digital application, it should be only for digital application. Capacity cannot go beyond 10,000 mAh. It means what we have the extra power bank around even now coming 15,000, 20,000, that cannot be eligible here. And you need to again localize at least one part component with electrolyte, anode electrode, and cathode electrode each. It means localization and particular part should be assembled within the campus, has to be done in all these categories to become eligible. Now we talk about the enclosures for mobile, IT hardware and devices. You can manufacture from metals or plastic or glass. And cover doesn't mean the outer cover, even the inside, any layers if you're putting there, that also comes under the category of this eligibility. And you need to do a finishing and decoration as part of the manufacturing process to become eligible. I already mentioned you for a multi-layer PCB and Li-ion cell, all these should be localized domestic value addition by procuring within India, whether you do it in-house or from other, otherwise your eligibility will not be there. Employment, again, employment, they have told, if one employee works for 12 months, then he will be counted 1. If he worked for 9 months, then it will be 0.9 or 0.75 in simple terms. By that mathematics, they will check your incremental employment from base year to the incentive year. Then only they will give money. And any apprentices, any casual labor not eligible, direct or contractual is eligible. They will check only through employees' PF organization record. Now, in certain cases, people are not opting for EPF. In that case, MATI should clarify how you will cross-check whether my employees are there or not. And certain laborers, whether blue collars, are not required to make PF due to some particular limit given under the PF part. How that they will count on record. It all need to be clarified still from the ministry. This time, I don't know why the fees is so high. Either they want to put from every segment such a restriction, because you need to apply, if you're putting 5 products, you need to put 5 applications. It means multiply by 5. If 2 lakh per application, 10 lakhs. If 3 lakh, 15, 5, 25. It's obviously a big money which government is taking for even a application part. And then there are multiple conditions of incremental sales, investment, employment, your domestic value addition, then sub-assembly of particular products for particular segment. Looking to all these conditions, any company who is looking to apply under this scheme, they need to go in depth, understand the eligibility, applicability, and then only you should apply. You can need a 6 to 7 year journey. And if you apply and not getting the adequate subsidies based on eligibility, then obviously it's a putting money and effort and not getting results. I told you the applicant, any company or LLP, the commercial production definition is very wide compared to the earlier scheme of specs or MSIP. In MSIP, even a sample production is considered commercial production under income tax, and that's also considered under MSIP. But now you need to start the production. You need to capitalize your equipment, capital goods, everything in your books of account. It has to be certified by the certified engineers and also the statutory audit. But from all the perspective, they are telling, if you satisfy, then only you will get the money. And also on net sales should be minus discount, any given, minus credit note. Any adjustment refund to customer against sales consideration, taxes, also expense related to advertisement and sales promotion and brand loyalty. I'm surprising. Are they giving me on the cost of the product, cost of goods sold, or are they giving me on my gross sale? Because advertisement, sales promotion, brand royalty is all part of my gross amount. You can't reduce and give me. It means by definition itself, your 100 will become 70. So on 70, you will get better 6% or 5% on them after satisfying all the conditions. So please note that if you assume anything in your books of account and say, I am getting this amount, but actually you get less, better to be prepared and accordingly do a computation based on this analysis. Now, how they will disburse the incentive? Whenever you criteria satisfying for all incremental investment, turnover, and employment for ABC, for D, capex, and commercial of commercial production, you will get money. So for base year, they will reduce your turnover. On that, whatever percentage eligible, they will give it to you. If employment is not achieved, they will withhold 1% of the turnover. For capex, 5%. Also, this time they put specifically under the scheme. If you are not performing, they will take away your approval because it's a pre-approval only. If your investment in 1 year or cumulative investment is lower than 50%, then they may revoke the approval. Same for capex. If no investment in 1 year or cumulative investment lower than 50%, they will make you ineligible. Also, if your turnover is less than from the whatever standards given by them, again they may revoke. Or they will give opportunity, but again now they are given the upper hand in the scheme. The non-performer will be set aside, and they will not be taken in the complete journey to say no, please perform, please perform. They will not wait now. They will simply say, if you are not performing, please move out, let others give the chance. That's why the window can be extended further. It means any time in any period of 7 years, they can open the window based on the rejection or cancellation of other approval. On specs, they have to come out how this acknowledged application will be shifted here. Otherwise, without clarity, still people are waiting. So number of people invested under specs, but till now they are not applied to incentive due to the non-issuance of approval letter. If we talk about the product, display assembly is very clear. Your video assembly is very clear. Only for specific product they are given the list. Like for non-SMT passive component, resistors, covered capacitors, ferrites, especially ceramics, inductors, coils for electronic application. Same replicated from spec. Electromechanical, somehow they reduce compared to the spec. Your speakers and microphones only for ICT, not for everything. Relays, switches, connectors, heat sinks, antenna. Vibrator motor. I don't know what is the meaning of vibrator motor here, because earlier BLDC motor was covered. Whether now BLDC, BLAC, all are covered here, not, they have to clarify now. Oscillators, filters, actuators, crystals, sensors, non-semiconductor, because they have given sensors in the ISM for semiconductor, transducers for electronic application. For supply chain of sub-assembly, it covers laminate, pre-pack, it's all illustrative, not exhaustive, copper foil, separator, cathode material, anode material, electrolyte, polypropylene film, spray, wire, lenses, protective film, glass cover, backlight, contrast film, polarization, etc. So in the electromechanical supply chain, they use etc. It means the definition is very wide, subject to ministry approval for any product which is not mentioned here. You can see category-wise investment for each part. They given the year-wise turnover link percentage, which is reducing year on year. For 6 layers and layers, so more than 8 layers, they are giving higher incentive compared to less than 6 layers. And also for multi-layer PCB and Li-ion cell, they're giving additional incentive subject to localization of particular CAM or what called laminate. Laminate for multi-layer PCB and CAM for Li-ion cell if you're doing it. The highest investment is in the SDI PCB, and lowest is in the supply chain and the capital goods. Year on year, there is a minimum requirement for turnover, investment, and employment. On that basis only, if you satisfy, you will be eligible. What we have seen, because as we are working on the multiple central state schemes, even 1 year, even 2 crore turnover, you are not able to go with your incremental turnover match. You are not getting money. You have to be watchful on month to month. You are able to satisfy all the conditions subject to definition given. If your sales is coming 100 crore, but based on definition of net sales, it is 70 crore, you are out. You need to see how definition mention, how it covers, and how all you are doing it. Then only you will able to achieve and get your money from the government. Same for non-SMT passive and all. They given year on year. For multi-layer PCB, Li-ion cell, because they are giving only 5-year window for investment. They are not giving 6 years. Same for enclosures for mobile IT hardware, SDI PCB, SMT passive components, supply chain, because you will make 10 crore investment. They are not given year on year. It's all depend on you. Whenever you achieve, take the money from them. And end-to-end process is this one, where you file it, they will do assessment, and then they issue acknowledgement with ID. They do appraisal, put the appraisal report before governing council, which include multiple council of ministers. Any modification, after modification, they will again come back, issue you approval letter. Then you go for year on year for your incentive application. They verify claim, and they are yet to issue the PMA. Mostly for MATI, all schemes PMA is IFCI. We don't know whether they will again use the same or they will give chance to new player, considering the challenges which in other scheme people are facing. Then they will issue sanction claim and then release the money directly in your account. The complete journey they are showing within maximum 3 to 4 months, but based on experience, even for a pre-approval, they take 3 to 6 months. And for subsidy release, from 6 months to 1.5 years, what we see in the window. So getting the money back in the account based on satisfying all the criteria, because they will do inspection, multiple verification, audits to ensure that you are getting your money back from the government. It's just given about us because I am part of Darda Advisors LLP, and it's our 6th year of running. In the part of Invest India Services, we provide end-to-end feasibility study of the project till doing documentation to ensure that you are not only concentrating on incentives, but doing proper planning from tax and regulatory, from central and state incentives and regulatory approval, so that once you start the project, there should be a project cost optimization from all sides. So that's all on the scheme part. Now, Jairaj, we can take the questions if anything people have to take it forward. Jairaj, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Vineet ji, for the detailed description of the entire policy. Now, we have a gentleman who was a part of policy making, and he was almost on every step, he was available. So, Mr. Vinod Sharma, Vinod ji, you are there. Yeah, he's there. Vinod ji, can you please, tell the audience that when you thought of, drafting this policy along with other industry leaders, what was there in your mind, and whether this particular policy is the same thing what you thought of or something different?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Jairaj, for having me here.
Yeah.
Thank you for walking us through the policy in great details.
Yeah.
And also Sanjeev ji, who had to leave early.
Yeah.
A fantastic job of introducing the policy to all our audience. So I won't speak about the policy. Let me spend a little time, 5-7 minutes, on the background as I understand it. And as Mr. Jairaj said, I've had the privilege of working, or let's say being a part of the stakeholder consultations, which have been extremely engaging. Government has talked to us at every step. So it's a process, very consultative process that was followed to get here. And I must say that MATI has been more than positively engaged with all of us, not only immediately, but even for the last few years, last 10 years, I would say.
Tole. Intro part antha.
If you look at, the way I see the electronics journey manufacturing out in India, I always compare this to a 4x400 meter relay race. The first leg of this 400-meter relay race, which we seem to have done well, at least in one part, is the assembly of finished goods. So one can argue whether that is the first part, whether that should have been right. But I think some of the figures that we see in terms of assembly of cell phones, their export especially, largely owing to two things that were done. One was a 20% import duty on cell phones, a stick on the one side and a carrot in the form of a PLI, a fairly remunerative, lucrative PLI for mobile phones. It was done a few years ago, and we are seeing the results of that, which is perfect, because unless we have assembly, belief that India can do large-scale manufacturing, not only for India, but for the world, would be misplaced. So you needed to believe in ourselves, and we needed to prove to the world that it can be done, and very happy that at least a part of that in the form of cell phone manufacturing or assembly is happening. And now the volumes, the value addition is also beginning to climb up slowly. though we would like to have it much better than what it is today. The second leg, and because I said this is based on two pillars, a stick of 20%, which has now become 15% import duty on, let's say, in the case of mobile phones. And that is why you see that IT hardware has not picked up as well, though there is also a policy for IT hardware, because on the one hand, there is no import duty on IT hardware. So I still have a choice to import a laptop or to buy it locally. Of course, there is a non-tariff barrier coming up, which keeps getting pushed off. And so you will need some kind of a barrier so that people begin to think of a good reason for why it has to be assembled in India. It happened in the case of mobile phone, results are there for us. See, it hasn't happened for IT hardware. We also see that that's not done so well. The second part of the pillar of that policy was, or that way of thinking was this huge incentive, an incentive of average 4, 5, 6, so 5% on the turnover. In the case of mobile phones, the investment to turnover ratios make it very, very interesting. So that policy, I think, puts it at 25. I put 1,000 crores on the ground, I get 25,000 crores of turnover, and I get 5% on 25,000 crores. So it is far more than my incentive. Makes a lot of sense for me to get into that business. And that is why we saw the results. Now, as the PLIs might go to a sunset, I don't think we can incentivize it forever. There will be questions asked whether we should continue to be the large assembly space that we have become. And those answers will not come out of either duty or out of PLI. They have to come out of us genuinely being globally competitive assemblers of these large-scale finished goods. And that answer will come from the second leg of the relay race, which is the components, which is what we are discussing today. So if a lot of those components are made in India, are available locally, the reason that the assembly is also competitive, obviously those reasons will go up. And that is the background in which this has come. Two parts to the components. One was non-semiconductor and the other one is semiconductor. Semiconductor is a tougher part, we know, because the investments are very large. You need to attract people. It's technology-wise very intensive. Not everybody is willing to share that technology with you. So the government took the bull by the horns, and I think the first part was answered through the CIMS policy, CIMS 1.0, and we do hope that a CIMS 2.0 will soon follow. So semiconductor part, ATMP, OSAT, to some extent got taken care of, and a couple of fabs. And now when we look at the non-semiconductors, I'm fond of calling them PEPCAMs. So P for passive PCBs, E for electromechanicals, P for all the passives that we saw just now, capacitor, resistor, inductors, C for connectors, A for actives, which are not semiconductors, M for magnetics, and S for sensors. So that is the category largely that we are looking at. Of course, what I've not included is modules and mechanicals, but those are also part of the policy and they're equally important. So the government has now made an effort to make sure that this what had remained in the policy as a gap area is now fulfilled to some extent. Now, how well is this fulfilled? Let us talk about that. It is, in my opinion, largely positive. If I look at it not from a perspective of what all we wanted, but what all is possible in today's realm. So what is not possible on components because of our ITA1 WTO agreement, which of course some of us have reasons to say, why can't we sort of review that now, given what is happening around the world, especially with Mr. Trump's tariffs. But that's a separate discussion. But as long as we are following the ITA1, we have no choice but to keep the component duty at zero. So there is no stick. Somebody who wants to use components in India will continue to get them at zero duty imports. As America makes it very difficult for stuff to be exported to America, chances are that they will get dumped, and actually the component prices might be even lower from China than they are at the moment. So that's the whole tariff part of it. In the non-tariff, we see that the government has made some efforts in QCOs and some standards coming in, some BIS standards for some of the more electrical items, not so much electronics. But that's a tool that every country has, and it may or may not get used. So the stick part is pretty weak in this whole policy. Now, coming to the carrot, we see that, as Mr. Vineet very lucidly explained to us, that anywhere from 1% to about 10% is the kind of incentive. And what is hidden within that is that instead of 4 or 5 years, this is a 6-year incentive policy, which makes a lot of sense. But the incentives are also capped at 50% of your investment. So unlike the mobile case where I explained to you that you could get in my opinion, at least 6.25 times your investment, theoretically, not necessarily that everybody will get it other. In this case, your final incentive will be restricted to 50% of your investments into components or modules. Maybe some states will add up to that a little bit, but that's to be seen. As the state electronic policies or component policies will get rolled out. Components we know is also has some issues. One is the investment to turnover ratios are typically, you will see in the policy. If I see the average across all types, I think we agree to about 1:3. Many components are 1:2. Or in some cases even 1:1. That means if 50 crores on the ground, I'll only get 100 crore turnover. If you give me even an 8% incentive on that, that's only 8 crores for an investment of 100. So one could argue that that's not enough. But given the fact that these are zero duty items, these are technology intensive items in many cases, the risks are high. The kind of investments that we see, we can foresee coming in, will largely happen because I think a supply chain shift is happening. So I would urge everybody to not look at only this from an incentive perspective or only this from a component incentive perspective, but there are many other things happening around us. Geopolitics, the tariffs, the fact that supply chains are trying to find a more reliable land than our friendly neighbors in the north, call it China +1 or call it whatever. The opportunity for us to be able to engage in that is quite high. And given the fact that a lot of this assembly is beginning to happen in India, whether it's air conditioning, reaching a certain mass, washing machines, televisions, a lot of power supply, a lot of modules. So there are some parts and subparts that are coming in. What is also unique about this policy, which I find very positive, is that we've tried for once through a policy also answer a little bit, address some of the concerns of the supply chain. And which is why you will see that though it sounds a little cumbersome sometimes, but you are being encouraged not only to make the component, but also localize at least the 1 or 2 key raw materials that go into the component, key engineered raw materials that go into that component. And similarly, there is also an attempt to be able to incentivize the capital goods for such component manufacturing. There I can argue that giving a capital intensive for capital manufacturing probably is not the best thing to do. It should have been a turnover link also for them, or a hybrid, but like I said, not all policies are exactly what we want. But these are definitely a huge step in the right direction, as I would argue it. Also on the guidelines, what I like is the fact that the government has tried to make it as easy as possible. Things like very tricky issues on the last few policies, I know, for example, getting a financial closure, would become a very big stumbling block. They've tried to answer it. They've tried to ease it out. As we roll out the policy, I'm sure some of us will agree that this is good. Some of us might find that even this is not good enough. But that debate will continue. But in a nutshell, if I were to say, as a businessman, as a person who's making components for the last, my company is now, this is our 40th year. I've been around for 3 decades in the business. I can, I feel very positive and happy and optimistic that a policy of this kind for components had never come before. Can it be better? Always it can be better, but we will talk about this. I'm sure this is not the last policy. We can always go back to the government once we've proven that we are up to a lot of activity and we can claim a big share. There is time for us to reach the levels that we want to reach, because the numbers are very large. If your vision is to do $500 billion of electronics, I always go by the simple maths of 60% of that is your electronic bomb. 60% of the electronic bomb is semiconductors, 40% of that is all the other components we are talking about. So you're talking of 40, of 60, of 60, of 500. Do the maths, you're talking of upwards of $100 billion, $120 billion something, of which only about $10, $12 billion is getting done today. So you have that kind of a 9x, 10x headroom, that kind of demand does exist. We have some disabilities, and those impact of those disabilities, I have always said, is directly proportional to the amount of value you add. If you only assemble, obviously the disability impact on your bottom line will be lesser. But if you do deep down value added manufacturing, 30, 40, 50% of value add, obviously the impact of the high cost of energy, logistics, high cost of finance, land costs, low labor productivity, ease of doing business or the lack of it thereof. Everything will add up and make it more difficult. But that is exactly what this policy is trying to mitigate, largely to an extent of about between 5 and 8% for most components, but theoretically 1 to 10%. And I think that's, in my opinion, personally, that's a large enough number for us to seriously consider this business. There is one, genuine criticism that may apply to the policy, that there has been not hard, in fact, no policy, no PLI has really been tailor-made to SMEs. Typically, the numbers that of threshold or the eligibility criteria are always so large that a typical small-scale industry is not able to get into that business. But there is a counter argument, and we did make this argument, so that's why I'm raising it. There's a counter argument that most of these components being zero duty or near zero duty, if you're not globally competitive, there's no point getting into that business. So there could be an argument that without the scale, if you do a 5 crore rupees register business, for example, maybe it is better not to do that business, because if registers can be imported at zero, you are really not going to, unless it's a niche kind of register that you make, this would make it very, very difficult to be competitive. So the government has kind of chosen a little more on scale rather than typically making it small scale. But I would argue that at least some with 50 crore thresholds, 50 crore investment required for most of the passives or not electromechanicals, but some of those items, it does make a good case for medium-sized companies. And last bit that I want to say is that don't look at all this only by yourself. For some of us who've been in the business, this is a time to open up our companies, do mergers or acquisitions, or get acquired, or do a joint venture, do a technology transfer. So the whole collaborative platform needs to be opened up, because all the survivors of the last 30, 40 years in this business are probably only the few people who understand how large-scale manufacturing of components can be done in India. And so it's not easy, but it's not impossible. And that's what I think many people in the audience also today have proven over the last few years. It's time to sort of now leverage that, by inviting Korean, Taiwanese, Chinese, German, whoever you like, some of those people to join hands with you, aim at not only the Indian market, but also maybe at buyback. Send back some of these components back to them. And even if it is by second-hand equipment that you are able to do it, Government of India is incentivizing that to some extent, at least in the beginning by 8%, 7% or 6% for the first 2-3 years. And that period is good enough for you to sort of stand on your own feet and create the scale that is globally competitive. So I look at it very, very optimistically, very positively. And I would say that all of us who are serious about this business, we should be having at least a 3 to 5x growth plan for the next 5-7 years. That should be I would say that should be the minimum mission that we should be setting for each one of ourselves. I'll be happy to take any questions today, or also later.
Vineet here, I have one question here.
Sure.
Obviously, you are the industry stalwart, and you know how the way the scheme will boost the Indian component sector. So, what is the view about which of the 4 segments they have put there, which will have the major attractiveness in India to boost it, because they have given the ABC segment a major chunk of subsidy amount. And the way they are putting it, they have put a very high segment products with multiple condition of sub-assembly and even the domestic value addition. So which segment you believe it will be a more attractive to the investors, whether Indian investor or a global investor?
So if you look at modules, for example, to start with, display modules and also the lithium-ion battery cells, the demand for India is already very high, number one. And there is a duty element on them already there, right? So that carrot and stick is working much better for items like that. There is also a certain logistical cost in being able to transport them, or there are some non-tariff barriers that are causing issues. So my sense is that these will be the first off the block. Also, the players here would probably be the existing EMS companies. If you look at, I think Dixon has already made an announcement, for example, on displays. Makes a lot of sense because they do a lot of assembly of displays onto their products already. and hence makes a lot of sense if they also got into a certain amount of backward integration, gives them that competitive strength. And that is why I mentioned that if you want to prevent the erosion of the assembly that we have seen in the last few years, you have to grow roots. And those roots are these kind of components and modules. So that would be one. The tougher one is, of course, going to be on electromechanical again, encasing, for example. We do have the competence already in India for. So the example is Tata Electronics. I think what they started doing with iPhones, for example, they are leaning very rightly so on their own. They did a lot of precision metal tool kind of work in Titan. So that experience helps. So they have the competence to do that. This is an extension of it. Tata being Tata, they have a clear vision. Very happy that they've come to the party now. And I do think that sort of thing will grow. The passive components is a difficult piece. Here, because technology requirements, and I mean, they're equally important for the others, but in this case, I see typically either Murata comes to India, as they've announced in Chennai, and sets up an MLCC plant. That'll be great. Because we do use millions and billions of these MLCCs. The investment thresholds are high. The technology thresholds are very high. And so those, either a very large company like a Murata, a Panasonic, or a Samsung would come in, TDK, could definitely go in. Or there could be some mid-sized companies coming out of Taiwan or Korea or China on their own or with Indian this thing. And in traditional areas like film capacitors, for example, the stars are lining up for many of these components as we look at each one of them. In film capacitors, you'll be surprised to know that two large global scale polypropylene film plants are already in India. So down to the basics of material, we are beginning to see that these are good quality plants. They have global experience and they're proving themselves. And then the film is metallized. We have several metallizers. I think more than 100 metallizers in India already. Metallizing machines are available. And then you have several capacitor makers already there. So in some of these segments, I feel even if the existing players take this seriously and expand a little bit, we could become a global hub for something like a film capacitor. That's an area that I know a little bit more because we also deal with it. PCBs, again, PCBs ideally should be close to, where the manufacturing or assembly is happening. Design of the PCBs. Today, it takes very long for a prototype to be done. So I think there is a lot of room again coming in there. And in PCB, and that's why the policymakers have been very wise by putting laminates as a key condition and incentivizing that part. Because if your key raw material is also being made here to some extent, or the engineering of that material is happening here, chances that you are more competitive will go up. What I did say is that, so these are the two legs of the race. There are two other legs that remain. The third one is design. So we are doing design for a lot of people, writing codes, doing product design for other people. I think when we begin to do our own design of products, Indian products for India and for similar countries in the world, that gives us an additional leverage because only a designer decides which components are going to be used. So if the components are being made here, assembly is done here, and the designer sits in India, obviously that gives us an additional impetus to take this to the next orbit. And the last leg of the race, in my opinion, is where some Indian brands become global brands. Today we have the Samsung and LGs of Korea. You have the Panasonics and the Sharps and the Sonys of Japan. Where are those representative brands for India? We have some in two-wheelers, for example, across the world, but we don't have too many other brands, and electronics, none, not even one. I think we will have to work on that. And I hope that some early starts that are made by some Noise and Boat in the wearables thing. I do hope many other brands, Havells, for example, is present in many. There's no reason why they can't become a global brand. So I do hope that this policy will be a trigger, and it is a step towards that winning of that race. And it's only when we have at least 4, 5, 6 companies at that level in mobile phones and televisions and in power supplies that we will begin to feel that we have now become an electronic manufacturer. It's a long race, but I think we are sowing the seeds of each of those tracks quite well.
Understood. But the multiple conditions, including employment generation, was never part of any of the scheme till now. I think with the NITI Aayog report, they have considered this, or you are the best person to tell us why they put this specific condition. Mostly the state governments have this condition that you should create the employment. then only I will give incentives.
Right. So, no, good that you asked me that question. I think the questions beginning to be asked now more and more is the taxpayer paying too much money to bring these companies to India? That's a genuine counterbalancing question that comes. So I remember in the mobile phone case, one of the big questions was, hey, are we only paying for assembly, or is this ever going to do any value add? And the criticism was that the value add was very shallow. But I think the policymakers to some extent are now proved right that the value addition, once the assembly began to happen, some value addition in phones has also gone up. Reason for some of those component people to be here is coming up now. Now, similarly, components, one of our reasons, which we have always been tom-tomming to the government is that more than assembly, and my personal calculation is that, or matrix thumb, back of the envelope calculation, is that for every 1 crore of assembly, you employ one person at best. So you will see 1,000 crore EMS company has 1,000 people, more or less. I mean, I'm just giving you a ballpark figure. But 1,000 crore component company will have 5,000 people directly employed, 5 times. So we told the government, okay, let's not go as far as 5 times, but at least 3 times as possible. Now, if you have incentivized assembly to some extent, now you're beginning to incentivize components. What do we give back to society? And I think one of the needs of a large population like India is employment, is jobs, and that too at the manufacturing level. Assembly jobs are fleeting jobs. You will see in some of the assembly industries, seasonal jobs. So we need to get rid of them. I mean, not rid of them, but we need to have jobs that are more value meaning, which are adding more value. And from components, I can tell you what is very interesting about components is, first of all, about electronics itself is that it's not just assembling some product which could have come from somewhere else. The moment we started doing cell phone assembly, we started looking like a different country. The world starts looking at us as a different country now. They say, oh, these guys are not only software guys. Now we are saying all the 4 iPhones that will be sold to US will actually be made in India. Now that's a huge statement. It costs us something to do that, but it makes the world look at us. So from a geopolitical perspective, we are positioning ourselves correctly. Now, when you begin to do the same thing for components and you start employing that many people in components, I can tell you a PCB or a capacitor or a transformer, this is the first place where some film, some resin, some heating processes, some vacuum processes, some polymers and resins all come together and create a first electronic component called, let's say, capacitors in this case. So it's a lot of talent we need. We need chemical engineers, we need thermal guys with statistical process techniques. So it is coming together of some real serious, hard, value-added manufacturing. And it is only correct. So one could argue that why is the government then putting it on the thing? So I think they've, while they've put that importance of the job markets, that it is our duty as entrepreneurs to create some jobs and be held responsible for them, accountable for them. They have also, in my opinion, diluted that by saying, okay, only 1% of the policy will depend on this. So in case somebody fails, instead of a 7%, he'll get 6%. But I think it's a good balance, in my opinion, because I think we also need to trigger to the engineering institutes. Today, all the software coding jobs are going away. So if I look at it from a macro perspective, we need to start making sure that some of these young engineers now are willing to and are getting trained and skilled to work in factories. And these are not hardware shops. These are genuinely good manufacturing processes. Many of our component factories are air-conditioned. They are Six Sigma processes. And I think it's about time that we raise the level of skills in this country. That would be my brief understanding of why we push this.
Yeah, great. I know we can take any question. Jairaj, if someone has a question, we can take it.
No, one is that there are a number of questions which have come on the chat box. Particularly the Rakesh Jain has been asking so many things. Now, one thing is that I would like to ask Vinodji, particularly in the PCB segment, the raw material has been a big challenge. And how is this policy is going to overcome the raw material challenge? If you don't resolve the matter of the raw material for the PCB segment, PCB segment will not grow, because last month I visited at least around 10 to 12 car factories, and they had all the common problem with the raw material.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it is they make a price, X price, or some equations are there in China. So could you please suggest what is the way where this problem can be resolved? Or have you thought of it during the drafting of the policy? Have
Correct.
you ever thought of this issue also will come?
Yes. So, it's a good question you ask again. Number one, I think so far one of the arguments of laminates not coming in was that we didn't have enough requirement for somebody to come and put in a plant. I think this policy triggers a lot of PCB people who are going to come in. We know that, for example, a large group like Jasbir ji has already committed to that, with the Ascent Circuit acquisition, and now with this Korean venture coming in. So not only that, I'm aware of 3 or 4 others who have not publicly announced it, of PCB plants coming in with reasonable size. So it makes a natural reason for one of the large laminate people, whoever sets up the first shop will have a first mover advantage and will get rid of some competition that he probably has in his own country. The second thing is that also there is an incentive linked to buying local laminate for the PCB guys. So if it is a question of competitiveness and they're off by 2, 3, 4%, that is also getting answered by this. The third is that, like I said, let's look at this policy as it's a missing piece of the puzzle that we are bringing in. So the electronic manufacturing cluster policy, for example, many years ago, I remember Madhya Pradesh, we were already discussing with the MP government, put a MP cluster, and I think it was in Indore or somewhere, so now PCB has a big problem with the affluent treatment. And we made a case to the state government that why don't you put a cluster, and the entire affluent treatment process is your problem. Make it a common facility under one of the cluster policies. And they agreed to it, and then there was not enough interest, but I hope the interest will now come. So there will be state governments that will step in. So I think, we need to look at the policy it's very easy and I can be very candid. I have always argued that in the case of mobile phones, I think while we wanted to see this immediate action, the cost of that action was actually quite high. It's a different thing that we haven't really finally paid so much. For whatever reasons, many companies did not make that threshold. So if you really look at from the amount of money that was committed in the PLI to the amount of money that's actually been paid, there is a huge difference.
Huge gap.
Paid out is quite okay. I think as taxpayers, we should be happy that it's been a very efficient policy. So I would urge everybody to look at it policy from 2 perspectives. One is, how does it impact me as a component maker, and does it kind of move the needle for me to make an expansion or make a bigger commitment? And to me personally, it does. On the other hand, it should not be such a big movement, that it's costing the country too much. After all of us have to come together as an ecosystem and make sure that what we are doing is competitive fair play, as we would expect from any government. And I think this policy, to that extent, for me, ticks a lot of boxes.
Is there any chances of amending the FTA 1?
The ITA 1, yes.
ITA 1.
ITA 1, so the good thing was, policy making also, and someone like me personally, you told me that you said in the introduction that I play a role there. And my trigger was ITA 1, because I could not understand how very sensible, very intelligent set of bureaucrats and very engaged businessmen could allow something like this to happen, without having discussed. Even China did not agree to the first WTO. China joined the WTO much after India did. So maybe all of us have to be blamed because we were sleeping at the wheel. So my personal effort, and I'm sure many of my colleagues would agree, and they've helped tremendously. We said, okay, let another such blunder not happen. Let's not do it before time. And fortunately, ITA 2 did not happen. CIMEI, I'm also, of course, play some role in CIMEI's discussions. And you will notice that RCEP, which was, in my opinion, an FTA with China, was stopped at the right time. Otherwise, that was going to happen. So I think the first and foremost, we at least fortunately managed to not make any more grave mistakes like that, in my personal opinion. Now, back to can we review it? Personally, I feel why not? I think the time has come to do that. Having said that, today, I think the question we have to ask ourselves is that, do we want to put a duty on components? Will it make it more expensive for the ecosystem? Or should we first? So I know that as a capacitor maker, this is not the right discussion I should be having. If I look only at my company, put a 20% on capacitors, I'll be a very rich man. But when I look at it from an ecosystem perspective, there is another choice. Hey, let us make 10x the amount of electronics we make in India. My company will also grow 10 times. And probably then I don't need this protection anymore. Because now I have a vision of becoming a global competitive player. At zero duty, I should be able to face the world. And having gone through this tough time, we feel that at least, for some of us, we are ready. And maybe, I don't know about the ITA one, but maybe making a component more expensive for my own people in India may not be the best course for us as a country.
That's absolutely right. No, because we can't afford to do that also. Only thing is, if I look back, my school days, we are all of the same age. We used to have a lot of chota units in Kirti Nagar, Muti Nagar, Lawrence Road, and Okla Industrial. Where are those gone? They have closed it because of, there's a bad policy.
Right.
Anyway, one Mr. Rakesh Jain is there. He's been asking so many questions. Can I have Mr. Rakesh Jain?
Yeah, my question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Vinod. I had the chance of seeing you in the Singularity Summit, and also subsequent to that, I also talked to you earlier and then subsequently very recently. And very heartening to listen to your strategic thought process in terms of electronics component manufacturing in India. Irrespective of the company which you belong to, you could have just stated something which is well-meaning for your company, but you have given a very nice thought for the entire sector. Thanks. The question I have already put in, after this particular electronics component manufacturing incentive, other things, do you think that this government of India, which used to come out with non-tariff barriers of QCO and something like that, that is also going to be imposed in certain areas?
Good question. So, thank you very much for the compliment first, Rakesh ji. It was a pleasure to meet you then. It was a pleasure to see you again today. I know that the Ministry of Commerce, and especially Minister Piyush Goyal ji, is very keen to use some of these quality control orders, non-tariff barriers, to make sure that the standards of products that are available in India are global standards. We don't compromise in the quality for our own citizens. And at the same time, to some extent, we could argue that some segments will receive a protection of some sorts. But let us remember that every protection to one sector is also sort of a deterrent to many other sectors.
Yes.
A recent example is QCO on steel, and I would say that, in my personal opinion, these are not very efficient or effective measures anymore. In China, they are very effective because of the governance structure that they have. In India, we generally have autonomous bodies who do not really speak to each other as efficiently as we would want them to speak. And so what happens is a QCO on steel, which might have been meant for a very large company like Tata Steel or SAIL or Jindal Steel, and to protect some construction steel from coming in or automotive steel from coming in, or raising the standards of that. I have nothing against that. But a small company like mine for the last 6 months is struggling because the steel lead wire that is used for my capacitor is not available to us. So sometimes you have to fly it by air. Sometimes you have to pay extra demurages, etc. And unfortunately, that steel wire is not available because it's not interesting to any of these large steel players.
Yeah.
So there is a pain and a gain, and we all hope and wish that there was a better stakeholder consultation that's done, and maybe some, like for example, what we use is a tin-plated copper-clad steel wire of 0.5 millimeter dia. None of these big players is interested in getting anything into that. It's too complicated for them. It doesn't make money. I will use maybe 5-10 tons a month. They're looking at 1,000 tons a month. So it's never going to make business sense to them. So some of these measures, non-tariff measures as they are, while China did very well by putting them, it's almost impossible to export anything to China because they close their borders in that way, in spite of being very competitive. In India, they have not worked. So I think we need to be very careful about some of these measures that are being put in. Having said that, there is no reason, and I always argue, for example, if I sell an electronic component to America, there is a UL, United Lab, and there is a standard, and these guys are like, divine powers. We don't have a single UL lab testing many of the products that I deal with in India. So even my testing, if I have to sell something to the US, I send my capacitors to somebody in Shanghai, a UL lab in Shanghai, pay a very hefty price, and then get them approved. Now, my argument here is that, hey, can we not, if we believe in the UL standard, and not only him, if I were to give it to an Indian customer, he says, Vinod, I also need UL capacitors from you. Why, sir? But you are not dealing with US. I say, I don't know here. What I get is UL. So you also give me UL. So we have created some non-tariff barriers for ourselves. And we are paying a completely different country for these very difficult. So I think the point I'm making is that case by case, we need to sit down with the stakeholders, guide the government, the ministries to take the right decisions, and make a case for saying, we would like certain products, like now the electric vehicle is an excellent example. For the first time, the world is making it together. Of course, China is far ahead, but India is getting its act together. I think all these part makers, EV makers, everybody gets together. So if you need UL, why don't we adopt the UL standard to an Indian standard? Why don't we have some Indian labs also doing the testing as per that? So that everything we do is as per UL standards and vice versa. And that is how a large market will open up to you. So we need to look at, non-tariff barriers are not only barriers, they are also a way to increase the quality of or the standards of our products. So I think, but like I said, these are discussions that need a lot of balance. I always say that don't take decisions which are notifications. I am in favor of taking decisions which are roadmaps. Which say, okay, for the next 1 year we will do this, then second year this is our effort, and third year this is what will happen. And so in a 2-3 year horizon, I think most things can be ironed out. But otherwise, if they don't, you suddenly see a notification, you see the notification about import of IT hardware. 3 times I think DGFT has said we will stop it, and they're not able to stop it because the reality on the ground is something else. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. One question related to this before others comes in. Government of India has come out with anti-dumping duty on those PCBs which is getting manufactured in India by claiming that India has got the capacity or something like that. So the government of India put some 12.5% to 20% sort of import duty, anti-dumping duty. Now, if I just extend this particular logic of government of India, then let's say some electronics component, let's say PCBs or something, once it starts getting manufactured in India, there is a case to also create an anti-dumping duty on that based on the logic which the government of India has adopted. What do you say about this? Whether this stakeholder consultation has covered this point directly, indirectly?
Yeah. So you're probably aware how the anti-dumping duty or this whole business happens, right?
Yeah.
I have to prove that somebody, in this case, let's say a Chinese manufacturer, is actually selling into my country at my market at a cheaper price than he actually sells it anywhere else. That's the basic logic. So he's dumping it into India, and that's why a commensurate anti-dumping is applied. So it's a question of actually legally proving it that this 2 or 3 manufacturers are doing this, and then of course they also do a study of the whole country and impose something on the whole country. Now there are 2 aspects to this. One, that this is a lengthy process. I have been to some of these DGTR meetings myself, and the Director General Trade Remedy is absolutely right, saying, look, I wrote to people. The stakeholder consultation, when you mentioned, in one case, I remember I was also injured party because we had aluminum foil, for example, getting an anti-dumping. I said, nobody asked us, and the aluminum foil required for capacitors is not available in this country. If somebody can make it in this country, I'll be happy to buy. And they said, no, but we must have asked you at the right time. You didn't come to us. I said, can you please prove it? Because nobody wrote to me. They said, no, we wrote to you. Let me see. And then I actually got an answer a few days later, because these are very good officers doing a very diligent job, in my opinion. And they said, look, we have written to the Director General of CIMEI, and you are a member of CIMEI. So if you don't get it, that is your problem. You speak to him. Now, CIMEI, you can imagine the Director General of CIMEI gets, I don't know, maybe 100 letters like this every day. So it might have reached the right people, and it's no excuse for not having communicated to the right people. So theoretically, stakeholder consultation, in practice, many of us are not being able to sort of address this, or we are not called at the right time. So this will continue to happen. And, I don't know an easy answer to that, but I do. In fact, at CIMEI also we had this discussion. There was a recent case of magnetics, and something has been now put on software rights. I personally feel, while companies in their own right, they've been injured, they've been suffering. So they go through the legal process, they prove it, and they get an anti-dumping duty put. But I think that today, if I look at it in the broader context, I feel that I think we need to make far more efforts to become globally competitive.
Yeah.
And whether it's an energy issue, finance issue, land issue, deal with the governments, try to solve that.
Structural issues.
Yeah, that's right. So that we can structurally, from a supply side, become very, very competitive.
Yes, yes.
And that would be the final answer. I by no means am I, sort of deriding what some of my colleagues are doing with anti-dumping duties. Is there, they are suffering. Their companies are not able to survive. What do they do? But let's remember that these are short-term measures. And if I look at the kind of huge opportunity that is in front of this country today, I would personally say that I'm going to focus more on the opportunity and, find a way. And at least as one company, I've been able to do it. Many of my colleagues have been able to do it. So I'm not alone. We've survived, we managed. And I think now we are looking at brighter futures.
Sir, can I come in the discussion at this stage?
Sure, Garg.
My apologies. I joined just now. I was coming out of the meeting. I wanted to join this meeting a little earlier, but I just came out of a meeting with 16th Finance Commission in Chandigarh. So I am sitting in the car. So I just heard Mr. Jan saying that anti-dumping on printed circuit board. That's what is my trigger to enter into the discussion here. I am a PCB maker and I also represent as a president of IPCA, Indian Printed Circuit Association. We have done a lot of work to get the 30% anti-dumping duty on the PCBs. It is good for the industry. We started getting some inquiries. It's almost been there for a year plus 2 months. We have got a lot of inquiries. PCB shops are full on production. Things are happening in the right direction. The investments are happening. But even then, some of our fraternity members, the industry's people, they are buying the PCBs through some other channels and getting into the country without paying duty directly or indirectly, and some misdeclarations, which is killing the industry. We need to be a little more up. We should work very diligently. There is huge amount of opportunity. I fully agree with Vinodji that we should do, if we do our bit, we are there. And the government is there to support. DGTR is the one area where they work very diligently for anti-dumping. It took us more than a year and lot of data collection and proving so that we could get the anti-dumping established on printed circuit boards. That's it.
I agree with you, Garg. You might want to pick up one thing at IPCA is that some of the groups, I know, when the anti-dumping was being put, I was also a board member of ACMA at that point of time. And some of the auto guys were up in arms and they did a very, I don't know if you were in that meeting.
Yeah, I was in touch. I mean, we presented our case to them as well because they are our customers. We can't ignore them. We can't offend them. We have to tell them, please help us, support, handhold, so that we can grow together.
Yeah, and what you would help the cause by is creating that roadmap. So saying, okay, what do you want? What is it that we don't have? And at least some of our members in IPCA can say, okay, give me 6 months time, 1 year time, I'm going to put this facility, make sure that I can give you this quality. I think that dialogue would be very, very helpful. And
it happened.
Especially the auto people are very keen to buy local. They have a slightly different behavior, in my opinion, than a lot of the electronic manufacturers. So auto is genuinely interested in buying local. If we can help them, that'll be great. I think it's a good opportunity.
No, it is happening, sir. That's what I'm reporting. I'm trying to report that it is because of the auto that the PCB factories are full of orders. That we are thankful to them. We extend our gratitude to them that they have done it.
Very happy to hear that. Please.
Yes.
Now, Garg Sahab is a veteran. I know, sir. You've been around for so long. I count you amongst all these survivors that I also count myself in.
So nice of you. It is because of the friends in the industry.
Yeah, not many companies could survive that zero duty, onslaught.
Vinodji, we had this discussion during that last year, the summit in Noida, when Mr. Garg was also available. He was there on the dais.
That's right.
Sir.
And anyway, I have one more gentleman, who is taking care of the entire export-related industry, Mr. Satish Kota. He's been spearheading and doing a lot of activities. reaching out to the global clients and all, and finding the opportunities or thing on various electronic products. So, Satish Koda, would you like to say something on the opportunities made available by because of this particular policy?
Uh, Actually, from the component space, am I visible, right? I'm audible,
Yeah,
right?
you're
Yeah,
visible.
good. Okay. See, actually, if we see, we still need to do a lot of things from our exports perspective, especially our imports have been quite high on an average for all the products, whether it is on the PCB side, capacitors or resistor side. We import around 3% of the world requirement, world imports. Okay, and when we talk about exports perspective, our export is 0.1, 0.19, 0.2% or 0.3%. Okay, so we still need to work it up and look at what opportunities are there. However, the beauty of this is compared to last year. Okay, so 2023 towards 2024. At various level, our exports has increased by 40-50%. So basically, earlier we had about, for if I say laptops, our India's market share was 0.12%. Now it has increased to 0.19%. So that's a promising option on that. Even when I look at from the perspective of PCBs and other guys also, we are now at the range of 0.5, 0.4%. Earlier, it was 0.12 to 0.2% as such. So I see promising and with this new manufacturing policy, I foresee some of the more opportunities that can be generated. May not be the immediate next year for the 2025 year. We may not see much things, but maybe 26 or 27, we still should be able to generate opportunities around that. Knowing that India's major markets as of today are one is the Middle East and African markets, but we need to compete with China and others at all levels. Okay. My only thing is what I've always seen as part of export related activities. Indian products, I foresee that our end product should reach the market than the intermediary. The components, yes, components and PCBs, all those things are there, but the complete end consumer electronics or laptops or those things is what we should try and see how to get into the market as such. But there are still a lot of things. I'm sure everybody knows that we are growing. Though we talk about iPhones alone getting manufactured in India and getting export, but there are so many other things that electronics is an can manufacture and export, and where we can assist people get into the new markets as such. So anyhow, as part of CIMEI, we always have been striving to talk to organizations, to talk to opportunities. In fact, during Invest Karnataka program, we did have some discussions with the Malaysian counterparts, the MIDA and Matrade, to try and see how Indian electronics manufacturers can work with, not only with manufacturers, but also with the design people, can work with Malaysian counterparts and see what is that we can co-create for the world as such. There are opportunities. How we take it is up to us. Thank you.
Yeah, no, totally in agreement, Satish. In fact, also look at ESC, the Export Promotion Council of Hardware and Software. I used to chair them at one time and in the EC, and I find that they are really a re-energized organization now. And Commerce has been very helpful. A lot of new missions, and most importantly, our missions abroad are very helpful. So, for example, if you're aiming at a certain country, today it's possible that you can even create a small office there with the help of the embassy. And some of us are members, so 4, 5, 6 of our members, if they want to be there, have a presence in an office, hire one consultant who can help all 4, 5 companies. Even that, the government of India is willing to subsidize to some extent. And ESC has done that quite well, both for software and now for hardware. So the opportunities are tremendous. Like you rightly said, I think we need to focus a little bit on which product to which market, and then crack that product market.
True. I agree with you on that, sir. So actually, I run an international trade platform called Navatize, where we publish all the data and information related to the international trade. So we provide a lot of data and reports for Indian embassies also. They do refer to our platform at various levels to understand what markets are there. And more importantly, see, one of the major things we all look at is we all want to capture the big market. But there is a very good market in the developing countries and the play where there are some smaller market sizes. Okay. For example, I always tell people, because I conduct programs on export related activities for government. The biggest problem that we see is we always want to go and sell to Germany, but we neglect Denmark and Belgium, who are neighbors, and they always give us a better dollar than the Germany. So that is what should come into our mindset, because many, especially as MSMEs, our target always has to be smart working than big sales. Our profit margin has to increase rather than the profit value.
Agree.
Good.
So I think we can conclude if we don't have anything. Thank you. I really thank Vinodji for sparing his precious and busy schedule, and that too on a first working day of the week. And your knowledge has always been there, and I always tell the people that Vinod Sharma speaks from the heart. So that has been your speciality.
Thank you.
And Vineet, explained very well, and I'm sure those who are available currently as an audience, let me make it very clear. Vineet will be in a position to help the people who want to set up their industries and all. And with the guidance of the luminaries like Vinodji and Sanjeev Keskar, I think we can take it forward. And I thank you one and all for making their presence for this extensive discussion on the component manufacturing ecosystem. Thank you so much and have a nice day. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vinod.
Thank you, Arvind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.